The Battle of Kaltoan Prime lasted 1 hour and 47 minutes. Historians would later call it the shortest and most decisive military engagement in galactic history. The Talvan Syndicate called it a massacre. The Coalition called it salvation. Humanity called it Tuesday. The first human salvo came from the dreadnoughts. Railguns fired slugs of metal accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy alone was enough to shatter shields that had held against Coalition weapons for decades. The first 3 Talvan ships simply ceased to exist, torn apart by impacts that released energy equivalent to small nuclear weapons. On the Talvan flagship, Warlord Karn watched in horror as his forward screen lit up with destruction. "Return fire. All weapons. Kill them!" The Talvan fleet responded with everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic weapons, a concentrated barrage that would have overwhelmed any Coalition defense. The human ships flew straight through it. Their shields flickered but held. Their armor absorbed hits that should have crippled them, and then the human fighters launched. Wing leader Lee Minsok led his squadron out of the carrier Halasan like a swarm of angry hornets. His fighter pulled maneuvers that should have killed him instantly. 8G turns, 9G acceleration, forces that would turn most organic beings into paste against their cockpit walls. All fighters free hunt pattern, Lee transmitted to his pilots. Priority targets are weapons systems and engines. Make them stop shooting and make them stop running. The human fighters moved like nothing the Talvan had ever seen. They were small, fast, and impossibly agile. They flew in patterns that seemed to defy physics. A Talvan gunner would lock onto one, pull the trigger and find that the fighter had already moved. By the time the gun fired, the fighter was behind them, lining up its own shot. Lee's targeting computer painted a Talvan cruiser. He fired a burst from his main gun, explosive rounds designed to penetrate armor and detonate inside. The cruiser's port weapons array exploded in a shower of debris and atmosphere venting into space. "Splash 1 weapons array," Lee reported calmly, moving to next target. Behind him, his squadron was systematically dismantling the Talvan fleet. They didn't destroy ships outright. They crippled them, took out weapons, disabled engines, left them floating helplessly in space for the Marines to deal with later. On the Baekdu, Lieutenant Kang Minji coordinated the fleet's fire like she was conducting a symphony of destruction. Her tactical display showed every ship, every weapon, every target. Her mind processed variables faster than most computers. "Destroyers, focus fire on Group Alpha," she ordered. "Those 6 ships are trying to flank us. Dreadnought Halasan, you have 3 cruisers at your port side moving into attack formation. Recommend splitting their formation with a broadside." Commander Sung Ji-young's voice came back relaxed and amused. "Copy that, Baekdu. Delivering broadside now." The Halasan rotated on its axis, presenting its full port weapons array to the approaching Talvan cruisers. For a moment, the pirates must have thought they had an advantage. The human ship was showing them its side, exposing what should be a vulnerable position. Then the Halasan fired every port-side gun simultaneously. The space between the ships lit up like a small star had been born. When the light faded, the 3 Talvan cruisers were drifting wreckage, their shields overwhelmed and their hulls torn open by weapons that made their own guns look like children's toys. "Targets neutralized," Sung reported, moving to support the carrier group. On the Talvan flagship, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Half of Karn's fleet was destroyed or disabled. The other half was trying desperately to either fight or flee. Neither option was working. Every ship that tried to run found human destroyers blocking their path. Every ship that tried to fight found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered. "Get us out of here," Karn screamed at his pilot. "Full power to engines." "We're leaving!" The flagship's engines burned at maximum output. They started to accelerate away from the battle. For a moment, Karn thought they might make it. Then Lieutenant Kang Minji's tactical prediction algorithm flagged their escape vector. "Captain Han, the enemy flagship is trying to run," Kang reported. "They're heading for jump distance. Recommend we stop them." Han looked at his weapons display. The Baekdu's main railgun was already charged. 1 shot, 1 target. He'd trained for moments like this his entire career. "Solution plotted," Kang said. "You have the shot, sir," Han fired. The railgun slug crossed the distance between the Baekdu and the flagship in less than a second. It hit the flagship's engine's dead center. The entire rear section of the ship exploded. Catastrophic damage that left the vessel tumbling through space, life support failing, crew dying. Target neutralized, Han said quietly. Kang, coordinate with the other ships. I want every surviving Talvan vessel disabled and secured. While the space battle raged, General Taxora's Marines were preparing for the boarding actions. The human destroyers had disabled 15 Talvan ships completely. Their weapons were offline, their engines were destroyed, and their crews were trapped inside floating metal boxes. All units, this is General Tak, she transmitted to her forces. Remember the rules of engagement. If they surrender, we take them prisoner. If they fight, you are authorized to use necessary force. Stay sharp and watch each other's backs. Sergeant Bayuna led her squad into the boarding pod. The small craft would attach to the Talvan ship's hull, cut through the armor, and deliver Marines directly into the enemy vessel. It was dangerous, intimate combat, the kind that separated good Marines from great ones. The boarding pod launched with a thud that Bay barely felt. Seconds later, they were clamped to a Talvan cruiser's hull. The cutting torch activated, slicing through armor like butter. Then the explosive bolts fired and the hull section blew inward. Go, 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 Bay shouted, leading her squad through the breach. They entered a corridor filled with shocked Talvan pirates. The aliens were taller than humans, with 4 arms and natural armor plating. They looked dangerous. They probably were dangerous to species weaker than them. To humans from a death world, they were just targets. Bay moved with practiced efficiency. Her combat training took over. One pirate raised a weapon. She crossed the distance between them before he could fire, struck his weapon arm with enough force to shatter the bone, and put him on the deck with a kick that would have killed a weaker being. The other pirates opened fire. Bay's squad took cover and returned fire with precision shots. The humans moved like they were born for this kind of combat, because in a way they were. Every human carried the genetic legacy of thousands of generations of survivors. Ancestors who fought predators, survived disasters, and conquered a planet that tried to kill them daily. The Talvan didn't stand a chance. Bay's squad cleared the corridor in under 3 minutes. They moved deeper into the ship, encountering sporadic resistance that collapsed almost immediately. The pirates had spent decades raiding defenseless civilians. They'd forgotten what it was like to fight someone who could fight back. Bridge secured, Bay reported 10 minutes later. We have prisoners. Ship is under our control. Similar reports came in from other boarding teams. The Marines moved through the Talvan vessels like professional exterminators clearing out an infestation. Some pirates surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight and learned why that was a mistake. By the time the boarding actions were complete, General Tak had secured 12 intact Talvan ships and taken over 800 prisoners. Not a single human Marine was killed. 17 were injured, mostly minor wounds from enemy weapons fire. The medics treated them quickly and efficiently. By human standards from a death world, these were acceptable losses. By coalition standards, it was a miracle. From the Bekdu's observation deck, Commander Velthar and Rinvara watched the entire battle in stunned silence. They'd seen the tactical displays, watched the efficient brutality of the human military, and witnessed the complete destruction of a pirate armada that had terrorized coalition space for decades. 1 hour, Velthar said quietly. They destroyed a force that we couldn't stop for decades in 1 hour. Dr. Park Suman stood beside them, her expression thoughtful. The Talvan made a mistake. They thought the coalition was weak because you're peaceful. They assumed anyone who didn't fight back couldn't fight back. Humanity knows the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of violence. They barely took casualties, Rinvara said, their wing membranes trembling. They flew through conditions that would kill us. They fought hand-to-hand against species larger than them and won easily. What would happen if humanity decided to conquer instead of protect? Then the galaxy would have a serious problem, Park admitted. But that's not who we are. We've seen what happens when power corrupts. We've lived through our own dark ages. We learned from our mistakes, Rinvara. We know that being strong doesn't mean you have to be cruel. On the bridge, Captain Han received the final damage reports. The Bekdu had taken a few hits to its forward shields, but nothing serious. One destroyer reported minor hull damage. 2 fighters were destroyed, but both pilots had ejected safely and been recovered. Total enemy casualties? Han asked us. Lieutenant Kang Minji pulled up the numbers. 17 Talvan ships destroyed completely. Even Choi looked determined, like he wanted to Admiral Yoon Taijin listen to the situation report with the same expression he used for everything: cold calculation. His reputation throughout the frontier fleet was simple: He was paranoid, aggressive, and absolutely brilliant at keeping people alive. Han had served under him for 15 years and learned to trust that calculating mind. Pirates attacking a civilian colony, Yoon said flatly. How many ships? Coalition sensors show 40 vessels, Han reported. Mixed classes. They're bombarding the planet from orbit. The colony shields are holding but won't last long. And the Coalition's military response? Commander Velthar spoke up, his translated voice heavy with shame. Admiral, we don't have a military in the way you would understand it. The Coalition has been at peace for so long that our ships are designed for exploration and research. We have security forces, but nothing that could face the Talvan. They've been raiding our frontier for decades, and we've been helpless to stop them. Yoon turned his flat gaze on the alien commander. 40 warships have been terrorizing your people for decades, and you never developed weapons to fight back? We thought diplomacy would work eventually, Rinvara said quietly. We thought we could reason with them, or at least avoid them. Violence isn't in our nature, Admiral. Violence isn't in your nature, Yoon repeated. He looked at Han. Captain Han, how long would it take us to reach this colony? 16 hours at maximum speed, Han replied. But sir, we'd have to go through the Kelspur radiation storm to get there that fast. The safe route would take 3 days. The colony won't last 3 days, Velthar said. The Talvan will break through the shields in 12 hours. After that, they'll land troops. They take prisoners to sell as slaves. They destroy infrastructure for fun. By the time you arrive via the safe route, everyone will be dead or worse. Yoon nodded once. Then we take the fast route. Captain Han, mobilize Battle Group 7. 5 dreadnoughts, 12 destroyers, 3 carriers. We leave in 30 minutes. Han felt a rush of pride in his crews. Yes, sir. We'll be ready. One more thing, Yoon said, and for the first time a slight smile crossed his face. Make sure our guests see how humans travel when we're in a hurry. Let them understand what they're allied with now. The next 30 minutes were controlled chaos. The entire frontier fleet shifted into high gear. Ships that had been running training exercises suddenly locked down into combat configuration. Weapon systems came online. Marines suited up in full combat gear. Fighter pilots ran to their craft. Commander Velthar and Rinvara watched from the Baekdu's observation deck, still in their protective suits. Dr. Park Suman stood with them, explaining what they were seeing. That's the dreadnought Halasan. Park pointed at a massive ship taking position in the fleet formation. Commander Sung Jiyoung's ship. She's known for unorthodox tactics. And there's the carrier group under wing leader Lee Min-suk, best fighter pilot in the fleet. How many humans are in this battle group? Velthar asked. About 15,000, Park said casually. Most are support crew, engineers, medical staff. The actual combat troops number around 3,000 Marines plus fighter pilots. 3,000, Rinvara repeated, against 40 pirate ships that have terrorized Coalition space for decades. Should be enough, Park said with confidence that shocked the aliens. The fleet began moving, accelerating hard toward the edge of the system. On the Baekdu's bridge, Captain Han watched the tactical display while Lieutenant Kang Minji coordinated with the other ships. All vessels reporting ready, Kang said. Course plotted through the Kelspar storm. Admiral Yoon is transmitting final battle orders. Han pulled up Yoon's tactical plan and smiled. It was aggressive, brutal, and exactly what the situation called for. The Talvan pirates had gotten comfortable raiding Coalition space without resistance. They were about to learn a very hard lesson about what happened when you attacked someone under humanity's protection. All hands, this is Captain Han, he announced, ship-wide. We're responding to a distress call from Coalition civilians under attack by pirates. This is a combat operation. We will be traveling through hazardous space at maximum speed. The enemy has 40 ships. They've been hurting innocent people for decades. Today we show them why that was a mistake. Stay sharp, stay ready, and remember what we fight for. Baekdu out. The fleet hit the edge of the Kelspur radiation storm at speeds that made the Coalition observers gasp. Space lit up with deadly radiation that would fry any unshielded electronics and kill most organic life in seconds. The human ships dove into it without slowing down. Captain, Rinvara's voice was panicked. You're flying into a radiation storm. Your crew will be killed. Han glanced at the radiation monitors. Elevated levels, sure, but nothing the Baekdu's shielding couldn't handle. We're fine, Rinvara. Our ships are built for this. Built for this? Velthar's light pulsed confused colors. You specifically designed ships that could fly through radiation that would kill us? We designed ships that could operate in any environment, Park explained. Earth has radiation, space has radiation, we just built accordingly. The truth was even more impressive than Park was letting on. Human ship designers had looked at all the obstacles in space and decided that none of them were good enough reasons to slow down. Radiation storms, better shielding, gravitational anomalies, stronger hull integrity, extreme temperatures, more efficient cooling and heating systems. The fleet also cut through what the Coalition maps marked as a gravitational anomaly field, space-time distortions that would tear most ships apart. The human vessels adjusted their gravity compensators and kept going. They're insane, Rinvara whispered. These humans are absolutely insane. No, Velthar said, his light pulsing a color that meant understanding. They're not insane. They're just used to living in a universe that's trying to kill them. This is normal for them. In the Bekdu's briefing room, Marine General Taksora was going over the boarding action plans with her unit commanders. Sergeant Bayuna sat in the front row studying the tactical data on the Talvan ships. We're hitting them hard and fast, Tak said. The destroyers will disable their engines. Carriers will deploy fighters to keep them from escaping. Then we board and secure the ships. Remember, these pirates have been raiding unarmed civilians for years. They won't expect real resistance. Use that. One of the younger Marines raised his hand. General, what if they surrender? Then we take them prisoner and hand them over to Coalition justice, Tak replied. But I wouldn't count on it. Pirates this bold usually fight to the end. Bay studied the Talvan ship schematics. The pirates used converted merchant vessels with weapons bolted on. Fast but lightly armored. Good for raiding defenseless colonies. Terrible for fighting actual warships. This is going to be too easy, Bay muttered to the Marine next to her. 16 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kaltoan Prime system. Their sensors immediately painted the tactical situation. 40 Talvan ships in orbit around the colony world, weapons firing at the failing planetary shields. A few small Coalition ships hovering uselessly at the edge of the system, unable to help. On the Talvan flagship, Warlord Karn watched his view screen with satisfaction. The colony shields were at 20% and falling. Another hour and his ships could land troops. Another day and they'd strip the colony of anything valuable and take prisoners to sell in the slave markets. Then his sensor officer made a confused sound. Warlord, we have new contacts. 37 ships just entered the system. Karn pulled up the sensor data and laughed. So the Coalition finally sent their fleet? Took them long enough. How many weapons do they have? The sensor officer worked at his console, then stopped. His face went pale. Warlord, those aren't Coalition ships. The power readings are off the scale. I'm detecting weapons that could punch through our armor like paper, and they're moving toward us at attack speed. Karn's laughter died. He pulled up the visual feed and saw the human fleet. Ships that looked like they were built for war. Aggressive angles, heavy armor plating, and weapons that looked like they could crack planets. All ships defensive formation. Karn ordered, "Prepare to engage." On the Bekdu's bridge, Admiral Yoon's face appeared on every screen in the human fleet. All ships, combat formation Delta. Carriers deploy fighters. Destroyers take point. Dreadnoughts provide fire support. Target priority is any ship actively firing on the colony. If they run, let them. If they fight, destroy them. Execute. Captain Han opened a broad-spectrum channel that every Talvan ship could hear. He kept his voice calm and cold. Attention Talvan vessels. You are attacking civilians under Galactic Coalition protection. The Coalition is now under the protection of humanity. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. In the observation deck, Commander Velthar and Rinvara watched in amazement. He's giving them a chance to run? Rinvara asked. Of course, Dr. Park Suman said. We're not murderers. If they leave, we let them go. If they fight, we end them. It's their choice. On the Talvan flagship, Warlord Karn stared at his screen. 30 seconds. These unknown ships thought they could scare him with a time limit. His syndicate had been raiding Coalition space for decades. He'd faced down security. The meeting took place in the Bekdu's main conference room, and it almost didn't happen at all. Commander Velthar and his delegation spent 20 minutes on their ship, just preparing to board. They needed full environmental suits, gravity compensators, radiation shielding, oxygen filters. The list went on. Captain Han Jiwoo waited patiently at the airlock, trying not to feel insulted that the aliens needed so much protection, just to breathe the same air as him. Dr. Park Suman stood beside him, practically vibrating with excitement at the prospect of meeting an alien species face to face for the first time in human history. "Remember?" Park whispered. "Be gentle. Don't make any sudden moves. They're probably terrified of us." Han raised an eyebrow. "We're the ones who almost shot them." "Yes, but now they know what we are. What we can survive. Captain, to them we're walking nightmares." The airlock finally opened and Han got his first look at the Galactic Coalition. Commander Velthar came through first, his crystalline body contained within a suit that looked more like a personal spacecraft than protective gear. Behind him came Rinvara, their wing membranes folded tight against their body inside their own bulky suit. "Commander Velthar," Han said, keeping his voice soft and extending his hand slowly. "Welcome aboard the Bekdu. On behalf of humanity, I apologize for the hostile reception." Velthar's suit translated his light pulse language into words. "Captain Han, the apology should be ours. We entered your territory without permission. We only hope to help." They shook hands carefully. Han could feel how gentle Velthar was being. Like he was afraid Han's grip might shatter his crystalline structure. Maybe it could. Han made a mental note to be very, very careful. The conference room had been modified for the meeting. Extra gravity compensators for the aliens. Reinforced chairs that wouldn't buckle under what they considered crushing weight. The temperature had been lowered to something humans found cold, but the aliens considered barely survivable heat. Lieutenant Kang Minji was already seated at the tactical station, her role to observe and take notes. Engineer Choi Do-hyun sat in the corner looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. He'd been apologizing for the beacon incident every chance he got. "Please sit." Han gestured to the chairs. "Dr. Park has prepared a presentation about humanity. We thought it might help explain some things." Velthar and Rinvara settled into their chairs. Through their helmet displays, Han could see them looking around the room with what he guessed was amazement. To them, this ordinary conference room was probably like sitting inside an active volcano. Park activated the holographic display. An image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. Beautiful blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling across the surface. "This is Earth," Park began. "Our homeworld." She started listing the statistics. Gravity, 1.0 standard. Atmospheric composition, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. Average temperature swings from -40 to +50 degrees Celsius. Active plate tectonics causing frequent earthquakes. Volcanic activity. Extreme weather patterns including hurricanes, tornadoes, and blizzards. With each fact, Han watched the alien's body language shift. Velthar's light pulsed colors that the translation software marked as distress and disbelief. Rinvara's wing membranes tried to spread in agitation but were constrained by the suit. "That's impossible," Velthar finally said. "No complex life could evolve in those conditions. The gravity alone would crush most species. The oxygen would be toxic. The temperature swings would be lethal." "It gets better," Park said with a slight smile. She brought up images of Earth's wildlife: lions, bears, crocodiles, great white sharks, venomous snakes, poisonous frogs. These are some of the other species that share our planet. Many of them are predators. Some are larger and stronger than humans. We evolved alongside them. Rinvara made a sound that the translator interpreted as a whimper. "You evolved on a planet where the other species were dangerous predators? What kind of nightmare world is this?" "We call it home," Han said simply. Park continued the presentation showing human evolutionary history. How early humans survived by being smart, adaptable, and relentless. How they learned to make tools, control fire, and work together. How they spread across their entire planet, adapting to every environment from frozen tundra to burning deserts. "Here's what I think you really need to understand," Park said, her tone becoming serious. "Humans didn't just survive Earth, we thrived there. Our bodies adapted to handle high gravity, which made us strong. Our immune systems learned to fight off thousands of diseases and parasites, which made us resilient. Our minds learned to plan, strategize, and overcome obstacles, which made us clever. Earth didn't try to kill us. Earth made us what we are." Velthar was quiet for a long moment. His light pulsed through colors that suggested he was processing something difficult. "The Coalition has records of 3 Deathworld species in galactic history. All 3 became conquerors. All 3 had to be stopped through great sacrifice. You're telling me that humanity is the 4th? "Maybe," Han said. "Or maybe we learned from our history. We almost destroyed ourselves multiple times, Commander. Nuclear weapons, climate disasters, biological warfare. We came very close to extinction several times. We learned that conquest only leads to mutual destruction. Then why do you have such powerful weapons? Rinvara asked, gesturing at the ship around them. Why build warships like this if you don't intend to conquer? Lieutenant Kang Minji spoke up for the first time. Because there's a difference between being peaceful and being harmless. We choose to be peaceful. We choose not to conquer. But we'll die before we let someone hurt those under our protection. Han nodded agreement. The weapons aren't for conquest. They're for protection. We learned that the hard way on Earth. To demonstrate what he meant, Han called Sergeant Bae Yuna to the conference room. She arrived in her standard duty uniform, looking like any other soldier. Average height for a human, fit but not obviously enhanced. Sergeant Bae, Han said, would you mind demonstrating your physical capabilities for our guests? Standard training routine. Nothing fancy, Bae grinned. Yes, sir. What followed was a 15-minute display that left the aliens speechless. Bae performed push-ups with one hand, pull-ups with weights attached. She ran on a treadmill at speeds that would be considered sprinting for most species. She lifted weights that would crush coalition soldiers. She demonstrated hand-to-hand combat techniques on a practice dummy. Strikes that would probably kill most alien species on contact. And through it all, she barely broke a sweat. This is a standard human soldier, Velthar asked weakly. Not enhanced? Not cybernetically modified? This is completely natural, Park confirmed. Actually, Sergeant Bae is on the smaller side for our Marines. We have soldiers who are much larger and stronger. Rinvara's light pulsed a color the translator marked as existential dread. Commander, one human could tear through an entire coalition security team without weapons. Probably, Han admitted. But we wouldn't. That's the point we're trying to make. Yes, humans are dangerous. Yes, we evolved on a world that made us tough. But we're not monsters. We have empathy. We have compassion. We came out here to the frontier not to conquer new worlds, but to protect our colonies and explore in peace. Velthar stood up slowly, his movements careful in the gravity that was slowly crushing him despite the compensators. Captain Han, I need to send a report to the Coalition High Council. They need to know what we've discovered here, but I want to ask you something first. If humanity is as powerful as you seem to be, why haven't you expanded more aggressively? Your technology is advanced. Your people are formidable. You could probably take over a significant portion of known space if you wanted to. Han thought about how to answer that, because we've seen where that leads. We have thousands of years of history showing us that empires fall. Conquerors become tyrants. The strong always think they know what's best for the weak, and they're usually wrong. We don't want to rule anyone, Commander. We just want to live in peace and maybe make some friends among the stars. And if someone threatens that peace? Rinvara asked. Lieutenant Kang Minji smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. Then they'll learn why Earth's children are called Deathworlders. The meeting continued for another hour. The aliens asked questions about human culture, history, and biology. Park answered everything with scientific precision, while Han provided the human perspective. Choi Do-hyun finally stopped looking guilty and started contributing technical details about human engineering. As the meeting was wrapping up, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Han was on his feet instantly, his casual demeanor vanishing into cold professionalism. Report. The bridge communications came through the speakers. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal. This time it's real. Coalition Colony World Caltone Prime is under attack. Talvan Syndicate pirates. Multiple ships. They're requesting immediate assistance. Velthar's crystalline form flashed bright alarm colors. The Talvan? They've been raiding Coalition space for decades. We can't fight them. Our ships aren't designed for combat. Han looked at the alien commander for a long moment. Then he looked at his own officers. Kang Minji was already pulling up tactical data. Bae was standing at attention, ready for orders. Commander Velthar had faced many dangerous situations in his long career, but nothing quite like this. His ship's sensors were screaming warnings at him. Dozens of weapon locks, targeting lasers from ships so massive they made his Mercy fleet look like toys. And the energy readings coming from those vessels suggested power cores that could vaporize a small moon. This was not a dying species begging for rescue. This was a military armada that could probably conquer half the coalition if it wanted to. Broadcast peace signals, Velthar ordered, his crystalline body pulsing frantic green patterns. Universal friendship codes, medical assistance symbols, everything we have. Rinvara worked frantically at their console, transmitting on all frequencies, Commander. No response. I don't think they understand our language protocols. On the bridge of the Baekdu, Captain Han Jiwoo watched the alien ships broadcasting what his tactical computer was interpreting as aggressive geometric patterns. The translation software couldn't make sense of any of it. For all he knew, they were counting down to an attack. Still no response to our hails? Han asked. The communications officer shook his head. Nothing, sir. They're broadcasting something, but it's not matching any known language in our database. Could be a new species. Or could be pirates using some kind of jamming technique, Lieutenant Kang Minji added. Her fingers hovered over the firing controls. Sir, recommend we disable their engines before they can attack. Han considered it. The smart move would be to shoot first and ask questions later. That's what Admiral Yoon would do. That's what Han himself would have done 5 years ago, before he got soft enough to second-guess his instincts. Hold fire, he finally said, but keep weapons hot. If they so much as twitch wrong, light them up. Down in the engineering section of New Jeju Station, Choi Do-hyun burst into the control room, his face pale with horror. He'd finally accessed the beacon logs and saw what had been transmitting for the past hour. A garbled distress signal that made it look like humanity was dying in its own environment. Get me Captain Han, Choi shouted at the nearest communications technician. Right now. Emergency priority. The technician's eyes went wide at Choi's tone. Sir, the captain's in the middle of a situation. Unknown ships in the system. He's at battle stations. Choi felt his blood turn to ice. Unknown ships here because of his mistake with the beacon. Connect me anyway. Do it now. In space, the standoff continued. The coalition ships drifted closer, trying to establish some kind of communication. Commander Velthar was becoming increasingly worried. His sensors were providing more data about these mysterious ships, and none of it made sense. The vessels were built like fortresses, armor plating thick enough to shrug off weapons that would destroy coalition warships. Power cores running at temperatures that should melt anything near them. And inside those ships, his scanners detected life forms existing in environmental conditions that were absolutely insane. Rinvara, Velthar said slowly, run those environmental readings again. There must be an error. Rinvara's wing membranes trembled. I've run them 3 times, Commander. The readings are accurate. Inside those ships, the gravity is 0.98 standard. The oxygen content is 21%. There's background radiation everywhere, and the crew is walking around in it like it's normal. Velthar felt something close to fear pulse through his crystalline structure. That's impossible. No species could survive in those conditions. It's a Class 12 death world environment. Yet they're alive, Rinvara whispered. Commander, what if we didn't come to rescue a dying species? What if we came to the home system of Deathworlders? The word hung in the air between them. Deathworlders. The stuff of coalition nightmares and ancient legends, species that evolved in conditions so brutal that they became nearly unstoppable. The coalition had records of 3 Deathworld species in galactic history. All 3 had become conquerors. All 3 had been stopped only through overwhelming force and sacrifice. And now Velthar might have just stumbled into the territory of a 4th one, while that species thought he was attacking them. On the Baekdu's bridge, the communications panel suddenly lit up with an emergency signal from New Jeju Station. Han jabbed the accept button. This better be important. We're kind of busy here. Choi Do-hyun's voice came through, talking so fast the words almost ran together. Captain, sir, this is Engineer Choi. The unknown ships. They're not hostile. They're here because of me. The beacon. I accidentally sent out a distress signal instead of the exercise warning, and they think we're dying. And they came to help us, and please don't shoot them, sir. Han blinked. Once, twice. Say that again. Slowly. Choi took a deep breath and explained the beacon malfunction. How the encryption got scrambled. How it broadcast what looked like a distress call. How these ships probably thought they were coming to rescue humanity from environmental disaster. Lieutenant Kang Minji started laughing. It started as a quiet chuckle and built into full belly laughs that had her wiping tears from her eyes. They thought we needed rescue? From our own ships? Han felt a smile tugging at his own lips despite the situation. Well, that's embarrassing for everyone involved. He opened a channel to Admiral Yoon. Admiral, we have a situation update. Stand by. While Han briefed the Admiral, Dr. Park Suman was reviewing the sensor data from the unknown ships in her xenobiology lab. The readings fascinated her. The ships were built from materials that prioritized lightness over strength. Their power cores ran cool and efficient. The crew inside existed in environmental conditions that humans would consider uncomfortably gentle. These were not warriors. These were scientists, doctors, diplomats, species that evolved in kind environments and built a civilization around peace and cooperation. And humanity had just pointed enough guns at them to glass a continent. Park grabbed her tablet and ran for the bridge. She had to stop this before someone made a mistake that would start an interstellar war. On the Coalition flagship, Commander Velthar made a decision. Rinvara, prepare a first contact package. Basic mathematics, physics constants, universal concepts. If these Deathworlders are intelligent enough to build those ships, they're intelligent enough to understand peace. And if they're not? Rinvara asked quietly. Velthar's light pulsed a color that meant acceptance of fate. Then we die quickly, and hopefully our death will buy time for the Coalition to prepare. The first contact package transmitted as a series of mathematical equations. Prime numbers, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, basic physics concepts that any spacefaring species would understand, and woven through it all a simple message: we come in peace. We mean no harm. Please do not destroy us. On the Bekdu, Dr. Park Suman burst onto the bridge just as the transmission came through. She grabbed the communications officer's console and started analyzing the signal. Her eyes went wide with excitement. Captain, they're trying to communicate. Look at this, it's beautiful. They're using mathematical concepts as a universal language. This is a first contact protocol. They're not attacking. They never were. Han leaned over her shoulder, studying the patterns. Even he could recognize some of the equations from his academy days. Can we respond? Give me 2 minutes, Park said, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. I can set up a basic translation matrix. It won't be perfect, but we should be able to exchange simple concepts. Those 2 minutes felt like hours. The entire fleet waited, weapons still locked but fingers easing slightly off triggers. And then Park's translation software established connection. The first message from the Coalition was simple. We received distress signal. Came to help. Are you in danger? Han dictated the response while Park translated it into mathematical concepts. No danger. Signal was accident. We are safe. Sorry for confusion. There was a pause. Then, you survive in those conditions normally? Your biology permits this? Park looked up at Han with excitement in her eyes. Captain, they think our environment is lethal. They came here thinking they were rescuing a dying species. Han thought about the implications of that. These aliens lived in such gentle conditions that they considered humanity's normal environment to be a disaster zone. What kind of species were they? What kind of galaxy had humanity just made contact with? He watched the alien ships on his view screen, small and fragile-looking compared to the Bekdu, ships built for mercy, not war, and he'd almost blown them out of space because of a scrambled beacon. Tell them yes, Han said quietly. Tell them this is normal for us. And tell them we're very sorry for the scare. Invite them to talk face-to-face if they're willing. Park translated and transmitted. The response came back almost immediately. We accept. But we must ask, what kind of world did you come from? Han smiled, but there was no humor in it. That's going to be a very long conversation. The beacon started transmitting at 0400 hours, and nobody noticed for 6 whole minutes. Engineer Choi Do-hyun was 3 levels deep in the maintenance shaft of New Jeju Station, his fingers covered in grease, and his patience wearing thin. The Mao backup power relay had been acting up for weeks, and tonight he'd finally gotten approval to take it offline for repairs. Standard procedure. Simple work. Nothing that should have caused any problems. He yanked a burnt-out coupling free and tossed it into his tool bag. The replacement slid into place with a satisfying click. Power restored. Systems nominal. He wiped, his hands on his coveralls, and started climbing back up the shaft, already thinking about the coffee waiting for him in the break room. What Choi didn't know was that the power fluctuation had scrambled the encryption on Training Beacon 7. Instead of broadcasting, military exercise in progress, stay clear, it was now screaming into the void, help us, species dying, critical environmental failure. The signal reached the Galactic Coalition monitoring station at the edge of the Outer Rim territories 17 minutes later. Junior Analyst Pelrin, A young Etherian whose crystalline body pulsed with anxious yellow light stared at the decoded message with growing horror. The biometric data attached to the signal painted a nightmare picture. The species sending the distress call was surviving in an environment with 0.9 gravities. The atmosphere contained 21% oxygen. Background radiation levels were elevated. Temperature swings ranged from below freezing to scorching heat. To the coalition, these readings meant one thing: someone was dying in hell. Pelrin forwarded the signal to Commander Velthar immediately. The commander's light pulsed through the spectrum of colors that indicated deep concern. In his 300 years of service, Velthar had seen many tragedies. Entire colonies wiped out by disease. Ships lost in spatial anomalies. But this signal suggested something worse. It suggested a species was being slowly killed by an environment they couldn't escape. "Prepare a mercy fleet," Velthar ordered. 3 ships, medical configuration. We launch in 1 hour. His officers knew better than to question him. Commander Velthar had saved 17 different species over his long career. If he said someone needed help, they needed help. The coalition ships were beautiful things, designed more for comfort than combat. Smooth curves, gentle propulsion systems, and medical bays that could adapt to almost any biological need. They were built by species who had known peace for so long that war was something they studied in history files. As the Mercy fleet prepared to jump to faster-than-light speeds, Velthar studied the signal again. Something bothered him. The encryption was damaged, yes, but the power output was enormous. Whatever species sent this signal had impressive technology, even in their dying moments. "Maybe they're not all dead yet," his second-in-command Rinvara suggested, their wing membranes fluttering with hope. "Maybe we can still save some of them." Velthar's light pulsed agreement. They had to try. Meanwhile, 16 light-years away, Captain Han Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Baekdu and watched the training exercise unfold on his view screen. 37 ships were running combat drills in the asteroid field near New Jeju. Fighters weaved between space rocks. Destroyers practiced formation flying. Marines ran boarding simulations. It was beautiful chaos, and Han loved every second of it. "Target Alpha destroyed," Lieutenant Kang Minji reported from the tactical station. Her fingers danced across her console, already calculating the next firing solution. "Moving to target Beta." "Good kill," Han said, "but you took 4 seconds too long. The enemy wouldn't wait." Kang's smile was sharp. "The enemy wouldn't have shields that strong either, sir." Han grunted. She had a point. The training drones were built tough, designed to survive multiple hits so they could be reused. In a real fight, the Baekdu's railguns would tear through most targets like paper. "Sir, we're getting some weird readings from the station," the communications officer called out. "Beacon 7 is transmitting, but the encryption looks corrupted." Han frowned. "Corrupted how?" "It's not broadcasting the exercise warning code." "It's broadcasting, I'm not sure, the pattern's all wrong." "Shut it down. We don't need some garbled signal confusing civilian traffic." Han turned back to the view screen. "All ships, this is Baekdu actual. Continue exercise pattern Delta. I want tighter formations on the destroyer screen." The communications officer worked at his console, then looked up with confusion. "Sir, I can't shut it down remotely. The power relay reset locked me out. We'll need to do it manually from the station." Han sighed. There was always something. "Fine. Send a message to station maintenance. Tell them to kill Beacon 7 until they can fix the encryption." "Yes, sir." The message reached Choi Do-hyun just as he was pouring his coffee. He read it, swore colorfully, and headed back toward the maintenance shaft. This was going to be a long night. Back on the bridge of the Baekdu, Lieutenant Kang Minji was running the tactical teams through another drill. The view screen showed fighters making attack runs on a simulated enemy carrier. The pilots pushed, their crafts hard, pulling maneuvers that would crush most organic life forms under the G-forces. Han watched with satisfaction. These were good crews, young mostly but hungry to prove themselves. The frontier colonies didn't attract the soft or the lazy. Out here, you learned to be tough or you went back to the core worlds where life was easy. Admiral Yoon is asking for our status report, the communications officer said. Han smiled. Admiral Yoon Tae-jin ran the entire frontier defense fleet with an iron fist and a paranoid streak a mile wide. The man saw threats everywhere and prepared for all of them. It made him difficult to work with, but Han respected the hell out of him. Tell the Admiral that all ships are performing within expected parameters, Han said. Exercise should conclude in 4 hours. What none of them knew was that the Coalition Mercy Fleet was already halfway to their position. Commander Velthar had pushed his ships hard, burning through fuel reserves to reach the dying species faster. Every minute could mean more lives lost. The 3 Coalition ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the new Jeju system, their sensors sweeping for the source of the distress signal. What those sensors found made Commander Velthar's crystalline form flash with colors of confusion and alarm. The system wasn't in chaos. There was no debris field from a disaster, no signs of environmental collapse. Instead, his sensors showed dozens of massive warships conducting what appeared to be combat operations in an area of space that the distress signal claimed was lethal to organic life. Commander, Rinvara said quietly, I think we made a mistake. Before Velthar could respond, every single human ship in the system locked weapons on the 3 Coalition vessels. Targeting sensors painted them from multiple angles. Fire control systems activated. On 37 different bridges, captains asked the same question their crews were thinking. Who were these unknown ships, and why had they just appeared in a restricted military zone? On the bridge of the Baekdu, alarms screamed. Captain Han Ji-woo's coffee cup hit the deck and shattered. Lieutenant Kang Minji's hands flew across her console, pulling up targeting solutions on the unknown contacts. Battle stations, Han ordered, his voice cold and level. All ships, combat formation. Unknown vessels, this is your only warning. Identify yourselves immediately or be fired upon. The Coalition Mercy Fleet, which had come to rescue what they thought were dying refugees, suddenly found themselves staring down the barrels of humanity's guns. And somewhere in a maintenance shaft on New Jeju Station, engineer Choi Do-hyun finally reached Beacon 7 and shut it down. 62 minutes too late to stop the disaster he'd accidentally created.